What is the best computer to use for editing your podcast, and what is the best audio editing software that you can use? Thank you so much for watching this week. My name is the Shannon, radio broadcaster, podcaster, and podcast producer. And in today's video, we are talking all about computers and audio editing softwares, or DAWs, as we like to call them, digital audio workstations. And so this question comes to us from a viewer of this channel. His name is Terrell, and he and his friend are getting ready to start a brand new podcast. And he specifically sent me a voicemail that is through my website that you can find the voicemail button on my website at theshanman.com. There's a little green button that says send voicemail. You can send a voicemail on over to me, ask a question, and I'll hopefully be able to answer it for you, either right there in the voicemail or maybe I answer it on the YouTube video. And I thought his question was very worthy of being on my YouTube channel just because I don't have this particular video on my YouTube channel quite yet. So I think it will be helpful for those who are going to stumble upon my channel and need some answers, okay? So we're going to answer the question, what is the best computer to start a podcast, and of course, what is the best audio editing software? So I'm going to say that I'm going to be very subjective about this just because I've been using the same computer for the past 7 years, and I've been using the same exact audio editing software for the past 20 years before it was even called Adobe Audition. So these are the things that are more important to me as far as what the best is concerned. Now, have I tried other audio editing softwares and other computers? Yes, I have, but what I will tell you is that what I'm using is I'm using a Mac, and the Mac that I got back in 2013 had an i7 core processor with 16 gigs of RAM on it and about 500 gigs of storage on it. And this has lasted me, here we are in 2020, and it still continues to last me. Knock on wood, I don't have to update anytime soon, especially right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. So hopefully I don't have to update anytime soon. But I've been using that for that amount of time. I've been using this Mac for that amount of time, and it has never done me wrong. Very few crashes have ever happened on my Mac. Before my Mac, I had a PC, and it wasn't a bad computer. In fact, I still have the computer. It just needs updated. But I do know that it just had a lot of updates that were happening in the background as I was trying to edit audio, and it was becoming far more frustrating for me. This doesn't mean that PCs can't run fast. I just do know that you need to have stronger processors on them. And by no means am I a computer geek and do I know any of this stuff as far as the exact stuff that goes on inside the processor. I just know what I need to edit for a podcast. All right. So I would say the best computer, in my opinion, would be getting a Mac, a MacBook Pro. I do know that they have Mac Minis that are on the Apple website. I used to have a Mac Mini and used to edit on a Mac Mini, and they work wonderfully. In fact, you can upgrade the memory inside of a Mac Mini if you're not looking to get into a MacBook Pro. It's just a desktop computer that you would use, and you could edit your podcast that way. I've used Mac Minis in the past. They're great machines. Anything that I have to deal with an Apple computer it's wonderful. I hate to sound like the Apple fanboy. I'm not really an Apple fanboy, but what I'm looking for is reliability, and definitely Macs, they win every single time. Now, when it comes to audio editing software, this is really going to be kind of up to you, but this is what I've been using for the past 20 years. I've been using Adobe Audition. Before it was Adobe Audition, it was called Cool Edit Pro. And so this is just something that I have been familiar with using over the past 20 years. Adobe Audition, I think the reason why a lot of people use Adobe Audition is because it comes with the Creative Cloud Suite with Adobe. And so the Creative Cloud Suite has just been a godsend for me because I'm able to pay a monthly subscription to their service, and I am able to use all their applications. In fact, I've learned quite a few of their applications. I wouldn't say I'm a super pro, but I've been able to use their applications and develop more for my clients, my podcasts, whatever it may be. So when you get an Adobe Creative Cloud's subscription, you get Adobe Illustrator, you get Adobe Audition, Adobe Premiere, Photoshop, Lightroom, just InDesign. There's just so many applications that you can use with Adobe, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people use the Adobe Creative Cloud, because you can do so much. You can create images, you can create audio, you can create movies, you can create PDFs. I mean, it just goes on and on. So if you know how to use those programs, that's why people are using Adobe products. So I personally use Adobe Audition. Now, I think when it comes down to saying, okay, I'm going to use a computer and it's going to be a Mac and I'm going to use Adobe Audition, that's the audio editing software, I think you also need to come to talking about the equipment that you're going to be using. Now, I have another video that talks about the basic podcast setup that you can find up here on my YouTube channel. So if you go ahead and click up here, it'll take you directly to that particular video if you want to learn more about my basic podcast setup. But I've been using the same podcast setup for the past, I've been doing this for like at least using home recording equipment for the past 8 to 9 years. And I'm using currently right now the Yamaha MG10XU mixing board. And before I had this USB mixing board, I had the analog version. And the analog version actually still works really well. It was a difficult feat to actually get it to record into a computer, and especially since MacBook Pros don't have a whole lot of outputs and inputs. Now there's like lightning connectors, you now have to rely on like a USB or some type of USB adapter that goes into the MacBook Pro. So the USB mixing board has been wonderful to me. You'll see that there's a bunch of knobs. You see there's all kinds of settings. This mixing board is really meant for live sound, but you can easily record into a DAW like Adobe Audition and record your sound. Now you're recording the full mix whenever you're using this board. You're recording the full mix going into your DAW. And so there is less control in post-production to control the microphone sounds and record the different sounds that are going out of the mixing board and into your recording software. I know that this is an issue for some podcasters because there is this conception that you have to be able to control each and every individual audio file whenever you go into editing. I don't personally operate like that. That is not how I like to operate. I come from live radio, so I say, if you're going to create audio and it's going to come out flawed, it's going to come out flawed. And I prefer it that way. I'm not recording an audiobook, I'm recording a podcast, and I like to see that I have flaws in my recordings. So it's going to be really kind of up to you. All right. But this mixing board is very wonderful. But the one reason why I have this mixing board is because I am able to incorporate production elements whenever I want to create a podcast. So what I'm talking about is that this thing has it has sound effects on it. So you can enable sound effects within the mixing board and feed them directly into your audio recording itself. So let me give you a quick example, okay? So I've gone ahead and I've set the setting up over here on my mixing board, and I'm going to go ahead and engage it right now. And what you're going to hear is you're going to hear that it has a pitch change. So I'm going to go ahead and engage.
And here's the pitch change sound effect that you can use. Now,
I can go ahead and change the pitch on it. You can hear the pitch. That's just something a little bit different, I thought. Let's go ahead and change it a little bit more. Let's go to a different setting here. This is supposed to be radio. It's supposed to sound like it's an old-time radio, so you can create some type of filter that goes on top of your sound. So it's going to be really kind of up to you. But this is a really fun thing that I like to play with sometimes. You can hear just different. You can see here there's like kind of like a tremolo sound to it. Now, if you really want to get involved and go into the production part of podcasting, this is the mixing board for you, okay? Now, there's another mixing board that you can use called the Rode Procaster. This actually is a really wonderful piece of equipment. Now, the main difference between the Yamaha and the Procaster is just price is really all it is. And I guess features as well. So the Procaster really is more of a radio station in a box. That mixing board that you're going to see is more like what you see, what we have at the radio station. It's got faders on it. It's got your ability to adjust the headphone sound for your guests. It's got, I believe, 4 inputs for you to have microphones put inside of the mixing board. You can record phone calls via Bluetooth. I mean, it's actually a really cool piece of equipment. The one thing that it doesn't have is the sound effects. At least I don't think it has sound effects. I don't have the board yet because I haven't brought myself to buy the board yet, but I have a couple friends that have the board and they say they love it completely. And the sound off those mixing boards are awesome. Now, it is a $600 board compared to the $200 that you're getting. I think I need to clarify what sound effects are though first. So if you're talking about sound effects on the Yamaha MG10XU, you're talking about an effects processor that is on your voice. This is very similar to how you would say plug a guitar into a music pedal and it would create a different effect. You can do the same thing on a Yamaha MG10XU. This is mainly for production when you want to create production sound sound effects with your voice or with an instrument. What I'm talking about with sound effects on the Rode is actually on the right-hand side, you see those hotkeys or those hot pads that are colored, and those would be similar to what we use at the radio station called hotkeys, or just sound effects pads that we would upload a piece of audio and assign them to a particular hotkey pad, and we can fire that from the board itself, and it would play probably underneath the sound effects fader right there. So it's really more about the sound effects that you're finding, say, online, or you're creating yourself and uploading that audio file into the hotkeys to treat it like as if you're operating a radio station mixing board. It's just really going to depend on your objective on what is going to work best. I do know that the Rode Procaster allows you to record directly onto an SD card. So you better have a lot of space on that SD card in order to capture the podcast that you're going to be recording. But I think you can also record directly from the USB into a DAW like Adobe Audition. That's just something to think about. So tell me, what is the best computer to use for recording your own podcast, and what is the best audio editing software or DAW that you are using right now for your podcast? Has it made it simpler? Has it made it easy? What would you like to learn from your digital audio workstation and how to create a better podcast? I'd be interested in knowing. If you are starting a podcast also for the very first time, don't forget to download my essential equipment guide. That link is down in the description below. It gives you some of the equipment that I've talked about here today, and it'll tell you what you need to do to get started with your podcast. If you like this video, go ahead and leave it a thumbs up. And of course, if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell notification so you can get notified whenever I drop a brand new video. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video. And of course, again, leave comments down in the section below. I'd be interested in hearing what your setup is so that you can help other podcasters who are starting their journey for the first time.